and this is one of the only time I've ever done this. And I'm joined here with Nathan, and we're going to talk about a Rubicon trip for a little bit. So if you have any questions, put them in the live chat. I will do my best to try and glance at that every once in a bit to answer some questions if you guys have any. And yeah, let's just get started. So Nathan, first question. Um, Summarize it. Your trip. Like, what do you think was the best part of the trip for yourself?
Oof. I mean, the best part of the trip was just persevering and actually conquering all of that. It was overall, it was like the most challenging thing I've ever done. So, all
Well,
in all, it was super rewarding by the end of it. Definitely tough, but super challenging and ultimately rewarding.
I mean, it was very much the same for me as far as getting getting there to begin with. It's something that I didn't think that I would ever really do, being a bucket list kind of trail.
hmm
Well,
Yep.
uh, I don't know. Thankfully, we did persevere through every issue, not just mechanical, but the mental and emotional and physical, all of those things. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. Best part for me was just doing it. Getting out there and uh, got kind of the same thing of perseverance of being determined to go no matter what happened ahead of time because we had no idea what was going to happen on the trail, right?
Right.
But just getting there in the very beginning, there were some, problematic things or situational things for me since I live in Nashville. The shop is in Georgia, trying to get the skid plates on and get the diff fixed and all of that kind of stuff. And I know you put a lot of preparation into your rig too, beforehand. So what all did you do?
I mean, we outfitted it basically specifically for this trip. So beforehand, it was a regular regular old LJ, still with the Dana 30 up front. And earlier in the year, we had found and I stumbled across a Dana 44 front end, and so we found that and built that throughout the year, and kind of rebuilt a lot of the suspension along with that. So that was a lot of it, and all of that really ultimately came down to the wire because there were just a lot of things that continued to come up
Yeah,
throughout that build and finishing it up, as far as like we took it from a 4 inch in conjunction with just the axles, we put it up to 37-inch tires.
right.
And that, so with that, we just did like an extra half inch of spring lift, and then that like threw out all out of whack all the steering and the track bars, and so we started having to get a lot of parts like super last minute that like just everything wasn't dialing in correctly. So like we ordered like a track bar from Cab Fab and like 2 or 3 days before the trip, and like 2 or 3 days before the trip, I'm painting it in my backyard while Bubba is closing down the shop up in Buford to come down to my house to help finish and dial the rest of the things in that we just still had to button up, while trying to get gears broken in and everything like that around it. So it was an undertaking. I think we had three 3 a.m. nights at my house after the fact, just to continually button up lots of odds and ends on it.
Not to mention the fact that you have a different experience because you actually, for those of you who don't know, Julie, Nathan's wife, um, they actually went to, um, they didn't fly out there, right? They didn't fly there like Bubba and I did. They actually drove out there across country. So you had your vehicle with all of this new stuff loaded down. It had the rooftop tent and everything you needed for essentially 2 weeks worth of uh, worth of an adventure, right? Because you
Yep,
went 4 days and then the 4 days on the trail and then another 4 days there. I mean, just
that was the plan.
so that was the plan. That was the
Yep.
so so obviously all of the suspension, all the upgrades. You trust the front axle. You guys did a whole bunch of stuff besides just what a lot of people would say is just the lift or just going to 37s or whatever else. So you guys trust it. What else did you guys do? You had a new hardtop, right?
Yep, we put a new hardtop on it that allowed us to carry what was a super lightweight tent. The hardtop obviously was a little bit heavier than a factory hardtop, but that allowed us to carry a rooftop tent that weighed like 80 pounds without having to do an extra roof rack and everything like that. So that was really kind of something that Julie really wanted, and it was really important to her for the trip and that amount of time. I think the last time we did one of these cross country trips in the Jeep, we tent camped it, and that wasn't the most pleasant experience for her for the tent camping. So we did the rooftop tent this time for her. That turned out great. The other like really big upgrade in not only preparing for going to 37s was putting on a big brake kit for that new front axle in the 37s,
Right.
which I think that was probably the most important thing overall. Just once I actually was truly driving that around, and when we went through the Sierra Nevadas, having that big brake kit was probably a lifesaver driving through those mountains. Because even on 35s, and the fact that even on 33s, the factory brakes are kind of sketchy.
Yeah.
35s, you can get away with it, but at 37s, that alone would have been crazy. So I think that was probably one of the most important things, just for as far as getting there safely, was the brakes.
Right. Right. So, tell us a little bit about what happened on the trail.
Yeah. So ultimately, the trail was going great. I think we were I don't know, a mile or two ish in, mile and a half in, and we came up to an obstacle. We'd already gone through a bunch of pretty hard obstacles, and my passenger tire was kind of up against a rock, and we needed that passenger front tire to climb the rock, and then we'd be home free. Um, it wasn't grabbing anything, and so we threw the lockers on it and thought it might be grabbing. So we bumped it a couple times, and eventually what happened was that energy, just when we tried to bump it, that passenger front tire unfortunately wasn't spinning. We didn't realize it at the time. We realized it after the fact, but something's going on in the front axle rack. It's back at the shop now. We're still figuring that out. But basically what was happening, that since that wasn't pulling us over, it was just pressing against it, and that energy and that force just kind of went through my whole drivetrain, kind of blew apart my rear U joint, and then it shifted my whole axle back and broke apart my both of my track bar bracket on the rear axle, as well as the upper control arm brackets. And we like crazy bends in the shocks, so we blew out the shocks. um, Super challenging on the trail. I think Bubba was driving your Jeep at the time, so he came back, towed me out, and then we assessed. And thankfully, within a few minutes, we got lucky enough that one of the Jeeper Jamboree um, kind of cronies or whatever they're called, the on trail mechanics, happened to be not too far behind us, so they were able to walk up ahead and assess the situation. And within 20 minutes, they were behind us with a portable welder, getting to work on it. So that was kind of the first big thing that happened.
Think, yeah, yeah, and I mean, they did a fantastic job, and for any of you guys
Incredible.
that haven't been to a Jeepers Jamboree, um, I would do it again, like 100%. I would do it again. Having said that, the reason why I would do it again is because this time was a completely unique experience, and I think it would be a unique experience regardless. Like even if anything hadn't happened, but because it happened, we got to do things that next to no one gets to do.
Yep.
A challenge that we had to overcome, but those guys, like their pit crews or cronies or whatever you want to call them, like the guys that stepped up and helped, really helped, and not just like helping on the trail and trying to fix things, but like gave us accommodations for the night, guided us through, guided us next morning, said hey to us, kept in touch with us the entire trip, and it was fantastic. Um, you know, the first welding thing, it was like trying to weld the TJs and LJs both. Don't they share like the upper control arm bracket
Yep.
with our bracket? So
Yeah. Yep. So that's shared, and then on top of that, because it's lifted and it wasn't a triangulated rear end, you put a bracket on top of that to extend the height to kind of try to correct the angle. And so that in and of itself alone, even without wheeling, is putting more force and pressure on your track bar bracket because now that force is way up higher and farther away from those welds.
Sure.
So kind of incredible that it lasted as long as it has. Like I've been wheeling that Jeep now for 6 or 7 years. So pretty good that it lasted that long. But yeah, that one snapped completely clean off. We thought that that side was the only side, and that like we were finishing up the welding on that bracket, and we looked over and saw that the other up just the other side on just the upper control arm bracket was snapped in the same way. So
Because that happened, that's what actually caused the actual shift. And when the actual shifted, it was rubbing against your spring perches on the bottom, right, or your spring boots on the bottom, and that's what bent the shock shafts.
yeah, the I forget which, yeah, the spring buckets,
Yeah.
when the axle pushed back, when those brackets broke, that pushed back, and or I guess it kind of rotated back into the yep, into those the shocks and just completely bent them. I mean, they look like the dog's hind leg. They were just spitting fluid out everywhere. We've got some good trail trophies that'll get hung up at some point around the garage or something to use for that.
So I know that like after we got through the trail, we had the wonderful experiences and everything else. Went into town, uh, into South Lake Tahoe. Went to a brewery, had lunch or whatever. We went to like a gosh, what O'Reilly's or whatever, and you got some temporary shocks.
Yep,
You had put those on like in the parking lot of the
of the
place,
lodge.
the
Was it
little
the Topaz Lodge?
Topaz Lodge, Casino and Lodge, whatever it was. We had a good time there for sure. Um, well, you guys put that together and then headed back to Vegas. And on the way, we had some another unfortunate situation that came to pass where the bolts, the lug nuts, like sheared, right?
Yeah. What we think it basically happened was the lug nuts got loose through all the beating and banging that happened on the trail. The Rubicon Trail is relentless and it is nonstop, and the bumps that you take are pretty wild the whole time. And just didn't realize it. Those they backed off a little bit, so the wheel was a little bit wobbly, and that eventually just um, snapped the lug nuts off, and all of a sudden I was riding with you in your Jeep at the time. I was tired, and Bubba had taken over to drive my Jeep for a little bit, and we just changed radio channels too, because we had a lot of chatter. And as soon as we switch over to the channels, my wife Julie gets on and says, "Mayday, Mayday!" I look in the rearview mirror, and there goes the rear tire is just speeding past them, and we were in front,
Yeah,
and I don't know how far ahead. We were at least 2 or 3 football fields ahead,
yeah.
and I had to tell you to stop reversing back down the highway because the tire was coming at us, and it literally landed like right next to us out of the Jeep. Yep,
And so track is really a thing. Like here on the East Coast, that's all we're searching for. Like most of the time, is traction on the trail to get over an obstacle. And
yep,
I mean, the same can be said about the trail too. Some of that slick rock on the granite or whatever really don't have traction, but in places that traction can actually go against you, especially if you're used to East Coast wheeling and hitting the skinny pedal to get over obstacles. Um,
absolutely.
I'm happy to say, after everything that happened, all the parts that broke, and everything else, everybody got home safe.
Yeah,
We got the trail, and we definitely earned that badge. I
yep.
think, at least
Extremely proud of it.
I think that we earned that badge for sure. Um, but now that we're back, now it's time to kind of rethink the LJ, right? Like what are you guys planning to do now that you've had that experience and now we're kind of
Mhm.
starting from scratch in a way?
In a way, I mean, realistically, we're just gonna repair the damage because it was and is a monster.
Yeah,
Still, especially for out here on the East Coast. So, not doing a whole lot to it right now. We're just getting it buttoned back up. We brought it back to my house, and I spent a couple weeks just kind of going through, cleaning it, doing a few little things that I could here and there. And actually, over this past weekend, we got it back up to the shop
Yeah.
over there in Black Bear. So Bo is going to take it from there and get it fixed up. But realistically, for out here, it's great and it's
Yeah.
good to go, or it will be good to go pretty soon.
So
So
what do
nothing
you
too crazy. We spent a lot of time this year doing a lot to it. So it's once it gets back, it'll be good.
for yeah. So what do you think your next I guess the better question is like the Rubicon Trail is absolutely unrelenting, large boulders and things like that. Like how do you take that experience, all of it, and apply it to the trails that are coming up soon for you?
Yeah, I mean, it depends trail to trail. I think the biggest thing to learn and keep it is know what's going on with the rig itself. If something's not feeling right, as far as like that tire that wasn't spinning, should have
Right.
caught that, and rather than just trying to power through and hit the skinny pedal a little bit extra,
Yeah.
don't do don't do that. I've been really good about that. I think for the most part for a long time, but I think I got really confident as we were going through the trail. Thinking back, I think realistically, a lot of the Rubicon that I had accomplished to that point, was realistically in two-wheel drive.
Yeah.
So yeah, because I didn't have three-wheel drive unless I was engaging my locker, and I was not engaging my front locker unless I was kind of stuck. So um, yeah, I think just being smarter about when to push it is the big thing.
Well, I know that like here on the East Coast we don't have those big rocks and boulders, but I know that
Hmm.
when I went to Harlan, Kentucky, I had somewhat similar to that. And that's what made me want to go to. And it's what made me want to rock crawl more than go down country roads as much as I
Right.
do. It, right. So and overland, it really shifted me to like rocker lander kind of situation. So um, I know we got Uwari coming up, potentially going out to Arkansas for hot springs.
Yep.
And all of that. So I really look forward to having you on the trail with us and having a great time. And
Yeah.
you
Can't
know,
wait.
I'm excited to see your rig all fixed and back on the trail, man, for
Yeah,
sure.
it'll be great.
But for those of you guys that are watching, I'm gonna let Nathan go now because I know he's got some things to do, and I'm gonna bring Brad on because this dumbass right here didn't realize that I could only have at a time on this platform kind of thing. So Nathan, thanks so much
Cool.
for and talking about the Rubicon Trail. And yeah, man, I will talk to you soon. I'll see you on the trail.
Absolutely. Sounds good. I'll see you guys later.
All right. Let's see. For those of you with me, I'm trying to figure out what's going on. Okay. So we got him gone, and I've got to figure out how to add guests. So, Brad, if you're watching right now, you can jump on. Let's see. Add guest. Send. Add guest. Copy link. You guys hang tight. There he is. Okay. What's up, man?
Are we vertical? Let's see. Does
Yeah, I'll
that
just do.
help us? No.
All
There
right,
you go.
let's do this way. It's all good, man. It's all good. Okay, so it says orientation device back. So I'm gonna do this shit. You put yours vertical. You put yours vertical.
Okay, I'll go vertical.
Okay. All right.
Okay.
Hey guys, if you're watching this, just you already probably know that I'm a dumb, and that's just fine. You know, I'm okay. But we just had Nathan on. Welcome, Jeep and Bubba. We're talking about the Rubicon
Hey,
Trail.
how's it going?
And yeah, so just all in all, overall thoughts on that trip, man. Go for it.
So Rubicon Trail, as always, was grueling. It takes a lot out of you. It's gonna beat you down. And this particular time, I mean, it giveth and it taketh away. So this was my third time going, and this time it was more of riding with you guys, driving a little bit, but being trail support. And man, it was the same trail I remember, but with a different set of circumstances, right? We had
Sure.
breakages, we had, even running up, like y'all were talking about earlier, even running up to the trail, we did a lot of preparation, late nights in the shop, and then we camped a few days before we go in. So it's like you're already tired, you're exhausted, and then you're going into this thing that's like you're anxious. You're hoping you don't break, and then what we're a third of the way into the trail and disaster strike. So um, honestly, though, still a great experience. Absolutely awesome. Um, just different and hard. And you kind of need those things, right? You can't always run a Charlie's Creek. You can't always have like a walk in the park. You need some trails that are going to kick your butt, you know?
Uh, that for me was, I mean, the idea of running the trail was kind of a monstrous thing. Like it was something that like I didn't know if I would ever do. It was essentially like in the keeping, like to me that was like my Everest, and I didn't think that it was going to happen anytime soon. But then the
Hmm.
idea started floating around with our crew, right? And I'm like, fuck it, let's do it. Like let's just do it. And um, yeah, we had preparation and everything to do, and um, when we got there, I was just there. I was so excited to just be there that at that point, like I didn't even really care what happened on the trail. I didn't I didn't care. I had a great time wheeling and hanging out with you and Nathan and Julie and just experiencing that because I didn't think that I honestly I didn't know if I would ever experience it. So just getting to the starting point uh, was kind of that Mount Everest for me. Um, but yes, to your point, we absolutely need things that challenge us and things to look forward to and things to prepare for in that regard, especially in a sport, if you want to call it a sport, as far as off-roading and going out there. A lot of people think it's just relaxation, but that's what Charlie's Creek is to me. That's a relaxing drive through the woods. You know, it's not challenging anymore. Um, so, yeah, I mean, I agree. I know that we all had challenges on that trip, regardless if it was breakages or whatever else. But I'm certainly thankful for the guys at Jeepers Jamboree for putting all that together, uh, and that was just the best way to experience it. I think. I don't know if that came, but I think going to Jamboree and experiencing the town trail that way, absolutely the best way to experience the trail. Would you agree or no? Bubba, I don't.
Yeah, absolutely. Going back to what you're saying, going back to what you're saying about it being kind of the Everest, um, I had the same feeling the first time I went out there. I thought, this may never be a trail that I get to ride. And I feel like that was the trail for me that opened up the door for me to realize, hey, I need to get out west as much as possible. And then Black Bear Pass became that next trail for me, and then Moab became that next trail for me. And now out west doesn't seem quite so far away. It seems, um, it might be a couple of days drive, but it's a whole different world. And um, no matter where you're located, say you're based on the East Coast, it's awesome to get out there and experience that different type of wheeling and have those experiences. Now, the Jeepers Jamboree to me is going to be the best way to experience the Rubicon if you haven't done it before. And even me being on my third trip there, um, they have on that trip.
Oh, for sure. And I mean, we obviously found out about that, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So like I mean we found
Yeah, one of us is going to have to buy an electric welder at some point.
Yeah, no joke. Like we'll figure it out. I was actually watching some of Bleeping Jeeps competition thing about the different style of trail welding, whether it's using a battery setup or whether it's like a welder gun, like the roll gun kind of thing, or whatever else. The whole consider now for doing that kind of stuff. I do think that even though we like to keep our groups small when we go out and wheel, especially the harder stuff, I think that one of us needs to have something like that just in case. Who has? I have no idea where to even begin on that. But you know, as far as welding goes, like glue guns, I think are like as far as welding. That's about all I know. So glue guns. I don't know if we have a. Do we have a lag? Do we have an audio lag,
Yeah,
Brad?
I got a little bit of lag on my end for sure.
All right. I was just like, I just thought you were checking out. You're like, I don't give a shit what this guy's saying right now. Cool. And then he's just, it's like, good lord. Technology is fun, people. Technology is fun.
Hey, I just switched to my phone service, and I think the lag went away instead of
Yeah.
being on Wi-Fi. So that seems to help.
Yeah, I can actually, your words and your lips match now. So it's all good. So it's all good.
That's the nice part of living out in the country. My
Uh,
cell phone has better service than our Wi-Fi.
yeah, well, hey, that's just where we are now as a society. But having
Yep.
said,
But yeah,
go for it.
no, yeah, I definitely need to add a welder probably to my list of tools to add. And for first timers, you really got to think about that on any trail. What do you first bring out? Well, you need a way to air up, a way to air down, a way to fix a plug or patch. If you get a hole plug kit, you got to have certain hand tools. Um, but then you really start getting into big stuff. You need a chainsaw, you need a welder, you need some impacts, maybe some electric. You know,
And then,
and we used everything we had, everything everybody had. I mean, we were like multiple people's Jeeps worth of spare parts and tools and stuff like that on the
right.
trail. So
And then all of a sudden we're overlanders. Like that's what
all of a
happens.
sudden,
Yeah, all the stuff. You
the
got
crazy part, um, the crazy part was the guy on the bike. So we needed an axle shaft. They radio in. We need an axle shaft, and this guy shows up on a bike. It's not a dirt bike. I forget what the
so
specific name for it is. Um,
it was like an
but it has no seat.
it was like an
Yeah,
bike.
yeah, and this guy just rips in, and he's got an axle shaft on his back. Put it in Nathan's Jeep and back on the trail. But it was insane. But to me, the highlight, and I think we would all agree, was basically it's starting to get late in the day. It's 5 o'clock. We're 3.5 miles into the trail. We need to get to 8 to get to camp. So we're about to get into where it's going to be dark. Wheeling in the dark, there's going to be no spotters, no trail support. Where are we going to sleep at? Me and you are in hammocks. Nathan's in the rooftop tent. And then some kind souls come across the radio and say, bring them out to Spider. And we didn't know what Spider was.
Right.
And I'm not going to tell anybody what Spider is. If they get to experience it, then awesome. But these people own some property on the trail, basically, um, and they allowed us to stay at their place and cooked one of the best tri-tips I've ever eaten. We swam in a lake. We sat around a fire to some great conversations, none of which I'll repeat on here.
Yeah.
But it was an amazing day and night to go from I mean, we were just trying to get Nathan up the trail. We're pulling him at one point, and he just completely debeads his tire. And it was, well, as that tire deflates, we were also all deflated. We were just out of any juice. And we made it into that camp. It was like a ray of sunshine. All of a sudden our attitudes were excited. We're handing beers around. We're even wrenching on Nathan's Jeep excitedly. And that's one thing on a trail that big and on a trip this big, it's hard to get used to the highs and the lows. If you're out here on your normal stuff, you might be even killed, a little bit of excitement, but you'll go from being like rock bottom to this is the greatest day of my life within a few minutes, and it's hard to deal with that emotionally and then energy wise. But that was my highlight, obviously, of the trip was staying a spider. I think all of us probably would say the same thing.
No, I 100% agree. Like, highlight of the trip for me, like what I was telling Nathan, was the fact that uh, I got to spend it with really good friends, and we got to do things that nobody else gets to do. On top of going to a place where I never thought I would go, like that was worth everything to me, um, regardless of what all the situational things that happened, like the breakages there. We had emotional distress, we had physical distress, we had like just parts breaking on Jeeps and whatnot. Um, but I told him I would do it again in a heartbeat. To to experience that was one of the best things in my life, but also one of the most challenging things in my life. And I think that a lot of people don't take challenges as progress for themselves. They like the even keel. They like to just do whatever they want to do or ride the same roads all the time. And I was telling Nathan, like, when I went to Harlan, Kentucky, and rode over some boulders and went down like a dry creek bed, that kind of thing with these big rocks, I'm like, this is way different than what I'm used to, and this is still on the East Coast, right? And
Mhm.
before that, right before that, actually, is when we went to Moab in Colorado, and I'm like, there's a whole different world out there that I mean, honestly, going from where I am in North Carolina or you in North Georgia, it's not that far away to go to Pennsylvania, right? Um, it's not west, but it's a whole different type of wheeling in Pennsylvania than it is in Georgia or North Carolina. You go a little bit west, you're at Stony Lonesome in Alabama, and you're at Hot Springs, which I hope we get to go to coming up soon. You got AOAA. Like, I mean, all these places that I haven't been, that's a totally different style of wheeling than what we're used to. It's not Charlie's Creek. It's not the forest roads that are getting shut down left and right. So I would encourage people that are doing these things, whether they're beginners or anything else, is find what you really enjoy doing. And in order to find what you enjoy doing, you have to do different things. I mean, that's it.
Yeah. No, and I totally agree. And I think, I grew a lot on this trip. Anytime that you have the amount of breakages that you had, I mean, Nathan, uh, he broke an axle shaft. I think that he broke his front locker, or at least part of it. He broke two track bar mounts, broke a U joint, broke two shocks, broke a control arm. Ultimately, five studs and a rotor. I mean, the list goes on and on. You're gonna if you stick in with it, you're gonna learn. You're gonna gain a little grit, gain a little character, and that's think that's what life's about. You just stick with what you're used to. You're not really growing, and I think for some people that's fine. They don't think of the sport or the hobby of jeeping as character building, but for me and you that live and breathe it, eat it, it's our main thing. Like, I love progressing, and one thing I got to say that I got to take my hat off to, like literally, but is on the Rubicon, how many older guys and ladies that you see on the trail. I'm talking like 70s and 80s, and I'm like, I just got beat up getting here. I can't believe these senior citizens are out here on the trail, and that gives me some inspiration that hey, maybe I could be 80 years old bouncing down a trail and still enjoying the sport. Shout out real quick to GFT gravity, friction, traction. He said it was trials bikes, and I think he's absolutely right. He's got some good comments about the Rubicon.
Oh, right on.
Uh,
Yeah,
but
yeah,
yeah, good trials bike is yeah, that's what it was. He was on a trials bike. Yeah,
yeah. He also said that he grew up running other things, and then the mud stuff doesn't look fun. And I honestly,
mud's horrible.
I honestly agree with you. Like the mud stuff is absolutely
Yeah,
slick. Rock, on the other hand, is fun, right? But like when you're driving up creek beds or you go to Windrock in Tennessee, like it's absolutely fun. And yes, old man on truck, I see you old people do rock for sure. And I guarantee you that half of those people that were on the Rubicon Trail that were that age could kick my ass. So I have no worries about it. Like I think it would be phenomenal to be that age and be able to do those things because yeah, we were exhausted mentally, physically, and everything. Um, but having said all that, yes, Nathan, the mud be stinky for sure.
doo
um,
doo mud. Yeah,
mud, yeah, we know all about that.
Russ got into some of that in Coventry Cove, and he's still getting it out of his wheel bearings.
I
It's rough.
have it, and those of you who might not be interested, I'm going to say it anyway. Um, I have a full float front and rear axle, so it's essentially a spindle. Even though the axles that I have a the speed sensor sealed from that kind of stuff. Yeah, there's still a ton of mud in there, and I think that's where it happened when I tried to go through that gigantic mud hole and got stuck. And yeah,
That was stank mud for
that was
sure.
that was stink mud for sure.
Yeah.
But Brad, I know that like the Rubicon, you've done it the third time.
Hmm.
Out west here really soon. I'm going northeast.
Hmm.
What do you think that you would ever go to California again?
Yeah, I'll definitely go back. Um, yeah, the Rubicon, I can wait 5 or 10 years before I go back again. Uh, but
Wait
I'd
till
like to go do the
just wait
yeah,
till time.
yeah. But doozy, I'd like to go back to the doozy, and I'd like to do some of the overlanding in the state, Death Valley and some areas like that. Obviously, not in the summertime. We drove through that area and it was blistering hot, but definitely would like to go experience some of that stuff in California as well. And yeah, I'm headed to Park City, Utah, in a little over a week, and gonna get to go through Moab and some stuff like that. Mostly overlanding, but we might get into some hard stuff. One thing I wanted to bring up was your Jeep. We talked about Nathan's braking, and I know he's still watching, not to rub in his face, but you had very little issues, and it's interesting to see the differences between the two. Obviously, his is two door Jeep, but it's a process. I even was watching some old kids last weekend, and I'm like, Russ was on 35 and 37s, and then different fenders, and now he's on 40s. It's like maybe talk about the progress and how it performed at the Rubicon because really it was the star. We never have to work. We never really worried about is Russ's Jeep going to make it through this? That meant that we had an anchor point to winch to or be towed off of. Really.
Well, I mean, kind of counterpoint. I was worried all the time. Like I was worried all the time about it because it was my Jeep, and I'm like, okay, because at this point I am an anchor point, or I am this kind of thing, right? Uh, but at the same time, like the the slow progression of building that rig has been something that obviously has been a dream for me for a long time. Uh, I got my first Jeep. It was a 2007 four door. I kept it completely stock, and I wheeled that thing for a couple of years, and then I traded it in. I mean, honestly, I traded it in. I got a Mazda hatchback like a fool, um, and then immediately after doing that, I regretted it. So I had to put money aside for years and years so I could get a Jeep again. It really is like it's a Jeep thing or whatever else. I know a lot of people say that, but that's kind of prevalent in the car culture, right? It could be a tuner thing, or it could be a drag thing, or whatever else. Like it's just, or drifting. Just I fell in love with that, and then I got a brand new Jeep, brand new Jeep off the showroom floor in 2015. It had like 11 miles on it, and again, I drove it stock for a while. I lived in Florida. There wasn't really a lot of wheeling for me. Um, so we went to Georgia. My wife and I. We went up to North Georgia, and that's where I met you and Wooly, and we did Charlie's Creek of all things, and Trey Mountain when it was open. And I don't know, man. It changed, just evolves, and then I do things like the Rubicon or whatever, and I want more, and I want more, and I want more of that experience, that challenging, that overcoming, that uh, adrenaline rush of doing what we do, and I enjoy putting things together. You know, like building in, doing everything myself, or as much of it as I can by myself. Learning and knowing the bolts and the torques and all the shit of going on with my vehicle. And I think that anybody that is an enthusiast about any type of vehicle kind of has a similar mindset. So when you meet friends that kind of feel the same way, or meet people that feel the same way, you become very fast friends. And you get to go and enjoy and do things together, like the Rubicon, or like going to Uari, like we've done several times, or going to Windrock almost annually, and stuff like that. It builds a community and camaraderie that I don't think you really find anywhere else. I mean, but yes, my fenders are new. So there you go.
Yeah, I mean, speaking of that, for me, I've felt this way for a while. It's like I want to get as many badges in the U.S. as possible, and funny enough, my first badge was the Rubicon. I had just found out about the app, and I'm out there on the road. That's my first badge I ever got. But Australia is really high on my list one day. I mean, and to me, that's like my current Rubicon is, right. Like that might be 10, 15 years from now.
Yeah,
Um, and I thought it was going to take me 10, 15 years to go to the Rubicon. So it might be 5 years from now, and I'm there, but I doubt it. With kids, it's going to get busier and busier in the shop. But like that's the thing. When you start pushing your comfort zone, it opens up your whole world, your horizon. It opens up the possibilities. And that's what's so special about the Rubicon, the story of the Rubicon Jeep and where it came from and how it got its name and the trail rated badges and all the history there and how all that ties into a guy from the East Coast loving the hobby with a Jeep Wrangler. It all ties in right there on that one trail, and that trail is special. It's not the hardest trail in the world. One of the meanest though, for sure.
yeah,
It's not loving, but at the same way, it'll beat you up all day and then it'll give you an awesome camp spot. And I think my favorite moments, and always are on off road trips, aren't necessarily even the trail. It's the night before.
yeah,
The meals that we have or the experiences, and um, those are things I remember when we look back on the trails. I don't necessarily remember like what I did on this line or that line. I always remember Nathan braking on that line, but I always remember
sure.
that. But
But I
yeah,
mean, talk about the history of the Rubicon Trail, and I mean, the fact that so many people are working every day to keep that trail open, keep it a county road, and uh, helping really enrich the environment as well as enjoy the environment there. And then Uncle Tom's Cabin, right? We went in there. It's like this legendary place. You look around, and there's the dollar bills that are like stapled with all these people just like us from all around the country, all around the world, that are putting their little mark because they went to that one place to do this one thing. We have this one experience, and I think that that is just rad. I think that's awesome. Like I can't even explain that to anybody outside of it, because it's kind of like going up Baby Lion's back or Lion's back. Like, to have that riding a sub sandwich, I think you called it, like that experience of like leaning off, and you can't tell anybody about that. You just have to experience it yourself. So I would encourage any of you guys that are watching that want to go and do the Rubicon Trail to go during the Jeepers Jamboree event. They will take care of you. I mean, it was a great experience for us going into town, going to Uncle Tom's cabin, riding the trail, the hospitality and the actual friendship that was formed out of that with some of those guys. I thought that was amazing. And then getting home, obviously, was a whole other separate adventure. Uh, but I'm looking forward to the next things that we have going on. I know you're leaving in just a couple of weeks, just like me. You know,
On the
yeah, and then
24th. Yeah. 10 days.
yeah, I'm gonna see you on Monday for sure. I'm gonna leave the ass crack of dawn, so I'm down there so we can get my stuff taken care of, and you can keep working on your stuff to head out south or out west. And yeah,
West, yeah.
I really appreciate you being there, guys. I appreciate you watching this channel and watching this event tonight. If you have any questions, obviously leave them down in the comments below. Here on the Adventurous YouTube channel or on the Jeep and Bubby YouTube channel, we will definitely respond to those things. And yeah, man, I'm gonna go to bed, I think, because I'm old. But
Make sure everybody knows, eat your prunes. You gotta eat your prunes.
absolutely,
It's, especially when you get old like you.
right? At least, guys,
Yeah.
live life adventurously. And until next time, I will see you on the trail.
We'll be seeing you.